So we're making adjustments because it's very unfair. This was done for a different reason. This was done right after the Civil War. This was for the babies of slaves. And what's happening now, people are building businesses around it. From wealthy people are building businesses around birthright citizenship. That's not the way it's supposed to work. It's a disgrace. They're buying their way in, and we're not going to let it happen. So, Steve, if you will, please.
Yes, so today the President signed these two executive orders here relating to birthright citizenship and birth tourism. As the President mentioned, the 14th Amendment was passed exclusively in the aftermath of the Civil War so to ensure that the children of slaves would be citizens. It had no other meaning and purpose outside of that. And that's been clear, obviously, since the day that it was passed. You can go back and you can read the congressional debates. This is not something that's even seriously contested by anybody. The President is using his authority as Commander-in-Chief to sign first an executive order using the new ruling the Supreme Court issued to expand the definitions of people who are ineligible for birthright citizenship. That includes, for example, alien enemies of the United States, members of foreign terrorist organizations, and large categories of people who lobby and act on behalf of foreign governments. And so with taking this action, it ensures that large numbers of people who wrongly would be getting birthright citizenship will no longer be eligible for those benefits. The second action that he's taking, which is especially historic, is for the first time ever in American history to ban birth tourism. So I want you to really let that sink in. This has been something that people have talked about not only for years, but for decades. The idea that people come here pretending to be a tourist, pretending to be a visitor, saying they want to go to Disneyland, or they want to go visit a monument or go to a national park, but the real reason they're here is to have a child, to make that child an automatic citizen, leave our country, and then have a U.S. citizen child. It gives them access under this broken system to welfare benefits, ultimately to the voting booth, and all the other rights and privileges that belong solely to Americans. So that practice of birth tourism is, as of the signing of this order, hereby.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are doing great wherever you're watching us from. America is once again debating who has the right to be called American, and this time the fight is over birthright citizenship. Donald Trump and his supporters argued that the 14th Amendment was created after the Civil War to generate citizenship to the children of formerly enslaved people, not to support what they describe as modern birth tourism or unrestricted immigration. But here is the question Black Americans should be asking: how does taking away constitutional citizenship protection from other people actually benefit us? Because Black Americans know exactly what happens when the government get to decide who is and who isn't a legitimate American. Our ancestors were enslaved, they were denied citizenship, they were denied basic rights, and the 14th Amendment was created during Reconstruction to address that history. So yes, Black Americans should absolutely demand recognition for the role our ancestors played in building this country. But we should also be careful when politicians use Black history to justify taking constitutional protection away from somebody else, because if the government gains more power to decide who belongs today, what's stopping that power from being used against somebody else tomorrow? This isn't simply an immigration debate, it's a debate about citizenship, constitutional rights, Black history, and who get to define what it means to be American. And that's where this conversation gets very interesting. Let's dive into the video real quick. I'll be back with my commentaries.
Birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment has always been about foundational Black Americans. Case closed, no debate. But they try to find loopholes in it the same way they try to find loopholes in the civil rights era, the same way they try to find loopholes in our rallies, our protests, and our marches, the same way they're trying to find loopholes right now with reparations. Everything that immigrants do has to be funneled through what Black Americans have created. Everything from the United States of America to a reparations paycheck. Birthright citizenship is for foundational Black Americans. Immigrants want to get in on it. Civil rights were for foundational Black Americans. Immigrants want to get in on it. Reparations is for foundational Black Americans. Immigrants want to get in on it. There's this whole system that has been created where you take things that Black Americans have created and then you try to hand it off to all these other groups. And when foundational Black Americans say, hail to the law, and we snatch it back because we delineate, everybody cries foul. Well, your ass gonna be shedding some tethered tears because we don't give a damn. This is our house. This is our time, and what we say goes. And if we shut you down in the process, you just gonna be shut down and you gotta live with it. If you name everything that Black Americans have done, if you name everything Black Americans have created, it all goes back to the excellence of our country, but don't nobody ever want to put the spotlight on that. That's fine, because we going to put the spotlight on it, and everybody knows our spotlight shines brightest amongst everybody's. And all we doing, family, is that we putting a twist on it. Each brother and sister, king, queen, goddess, and God, and we doing it our way. They cannot see us, not at all. They can try, but they're going to fail. And everybody always fails when they come up against us.
So I'm going to tell y'all again, Black people, y'all need to stop feeling sorry for other races of people who do not give a damn about you. They're coming over here taking all of our benefits. I sold cars for 6 years. All the foreign people who are coming from below the Texas border literally used to get grants to get vehicles. They used to come inside the dealership, come get a buyer's order, and they would come back with a U.S. Treasury check. If you look up the numbers, Google it right now, 40% or more of the children's SNAP benefits in America are going to Hispanic people. Over 40%. The money that your ancestors picked cotton for, like Trump said, with birthright citizenship, that was meant for slaves. But all these other people are coming from all these other countries, taking advantage of the rights that our ancestors earned, of the money that we were supposed to get. They're getting, the reason why they're saying that all the EBT money and all that stuff is spent up. When you apply for EBT, they ask you on the application what your race is. These people are putting that they're Black on these applications. They're not putting that they're Hispanic. They're thinking they're not going to get it. So the numbers are misconstrued. All the grants, you see all these people, you go to a Mexican neighborhood, everybody over there has a van with a ladder on it. Everybody has a pickup truck. There's a reason these people are getting grants. They're getting grants. They're taking advantage, getting all the benefits of our country. They're getting business grants. How are these people starting restaurants, opening up apartment buildings, and doing all this stuff? How are they getting all this money on work visas? How is this happening? And you guys are feeling sentimental for these people who literally came over here and took advantage of this country. A lot of them are getting paid under the table and aren't paying taxes that we're paying for. So now our country is running up debt, and y'all are defending them. That's crazy.
You know how I know some of you hate Black Americans? Because we've been talking about birthright citizenship and the repeal or the reversal of birthright citizenship for months now. And I have seen next to no one mention Black Americans, the people for whom the 14th Amendment was for. Yeah. The way some of you talk about immigration just generally has enabled the right to make it a wedge issue between Black people and Latinos. And that's exactly what they want it to be. That's exactly what they want it to be. They want for the rights of immigrants writ large, but mostly they mean Latinos, to be somehow in odds with the rights of Black people. And you are giving it to them on a little platter. Here it goes. Every time. Because you refuse to learn the history of Black people in the United States. It was not taught to you if you went to school in the United States. And so you reiterate whatever you think is the opposite of whatever talking point Donald Trump is making. But your failure to do your own research just shows how deeply you hate Black Americans. It's crazy.
Black Americans need to be heavily invested in this birthright citizenship conversation because we only have citizenship as a result of the 14th Amendment. And I know that there are segments of Black Americans that believe that we grew here like cornstalk. But if you're paying attention to the Supreme Court conversations that have been had today, they do not give a damn about indigeneity and have gone so far as to question Native folks. And if tribal indigenous folks can claim U.S. citizenship on their own land. I did a video last year, particularly talking about the Dred Scott decision of 1857. And if you're watching this on TikTok, you can look at my caption for that video. And I was talking about how the Dred Scott decision, which was a Supreme Court decision, tells you what you need to know about how they feel about us being here. Chief Justice Robert B. Taney said that Black people had no rights that a white man was bound to respect. that the Declaration of Independence naming that all men were created equal was not for us, and that ultimately servitude was our place as Black people in the United States of America, then you can absolutely recognize that no matter how many times they talk about illegals gaining citizenship, they don't want Black people to have it either. I find it odd that in this time, Black people will be trusting anything white men have to say, when the reason we have a whole ass Juneteenth is because people in Galveston, Texas weren't even told that they were emancipated. And also, it's not a matter of them stripping away our citizenship in order to ship us wherever around the world. It is their goal to have us in a continuum of servitude.
There's only two groups of people in this country that did not immigrate here: natives and African American descendants of slaves. So ending birthright citizenship would have ensured that there are only two groups of people in this country that are actually citizens because they did not immigrate: Native Americans and African American descendants of slaves. That's the level of incompetence and ineptitude you're dealing with this administration. In their quest to end birthright citizenship, they would have ensured that the only actual American citizens were natives and African American descendants of slaves. In fact, birthright citizenship was created to give newly freed slaves citizenship because they had no country of origin to return to. Because I don't know if you know, but when we were brought here to this country on ships as property, the origins of where we came from were destroyed so that we could not connect to our roots with another home country, so that we didn't have that home pride that every immigrant group did, so that we couldn't carry that tradition and stories with us. And we were branded property in America. And then once our time as property, human property of other humans ended, we were granted citizenship because there was nowhere else for us to go. We don't know where we're from in Africa. We're not African. We are American. And our parents were born here, and our grandparents were born here, and our great-grandparents were born here, and so on, ever since we've been considered human in this country. Your effort to make sure nobody can vote but white people almost made sure nobody can vote but Black people and natives. You almost made sure that Black people and Native Americans are the only citizens in this country. And I, for one, would have loved to see that. It would have been hilarious. It would have been better for everybody because those are the two groups of people who, anyway, we're not going to do that. But yeah, it's close. It's close.
I don't see a lot of creators talking about this, but the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear oral arguments regarding President Trump's challenge to birthright citizenship on April 1st, 2026. The case that President Trump is challenging focuses on whether an executive order can end automatic citizenship for children born in the U.S. to undocumented or temporary status. That could be a big win for Black Americans because, as we all know, Black Americans are the descendants of slaves, which the 14th Amendment birthright citizenship was originally for. So basically, because the United States is having an immigration issue, if this order that Trump is challenging gets passed, Black Americans in America will have a greater chance now of getting assistance, getting a job, and so much more. Like, you guys need to wake up and realize what's going on right now.
In regards to this birthright citizenship stuff, I want to be clear. I never really talked about this and never really got down into the subject of this because I didn't understand what was occurring and why it was occurring. At the end of the day, the constitutional clause that talks about birthright citizenship 100% was meant to include, or was 100% meant to refer to, the children of prisoners of war. Okay? It does not mean, and it did not mean at that time, that if somebody from Libya comes to America, that when they have a child, that they have birthright citizenship. It never did mean that, because at that time, when that law was put into place, there were only Indigenous Americans and Caucasians, or Europeans rather. There wasn't a whole bunch of other people here. So it at the time, it addressed the conversation of the time, of the moment, right? So the issue that I have with immigrants coming in and trying to use that as like a catch-all type of umbrella clause for them is that they then are now pushing that means that they have the same rights as those who are indigenous to this land, one, which is Black Americans, who I'm specifically talking about, and those who actually created the system with which we currently live in, which are the people who conquered us at the end of the day. That's what happened, right? Right? So the issue comes in when they are, and see, this is what they're doing. They are trying to say that black people are immigrants and we're immigrants, so we should be able to be treated and get the same rights as black people. And it's just not the truth. We are not immigrants. We were already here. So the issue with this conversation is that it separates us from our birthright and our inheritance to the land, okay? And to, you know, to benefit from the system, you know, that was created from on our backs. And it really was. And so when the immigrants come here and they say, oh, this place was built on the backs of immigrants. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. So black people, you got to pay attention to this, because actually at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is they are trying to say that black people are similar to immigrants, that we're the same, and we're not. We were indigenous to the land. We could never be the same. And I think we need to get a little bit ahead of this at the end of the day. I think instead of us even trying to play on this level field, because we are indigenous to the land, we have more capability and more power than we even know. And we need to start setting the tone for that. We need to start setting our own ground rules, because at the end of the day, it's getting out of hand. People who are coming from other places think that they have the same rights that you have. No, you have courtesies. There's a difference, right? You have courtesies. We've given you a courtesy. We've extended you a courtesy, okay? And we've given you some additional privileges, but those are not rights that you have. If you're an immigrant, that's just it. You're an immigrant. That means that we have given you courtesy. We have given you the courtesy to allow you to do certain things. That doesn't mean that you come over here and you start making the rules.
Is somebody American if both of their parents are Nigerian, but they came here on vacation, had birth, then left?
No.
But they were born here.
They were born here, but the parents were not legally allowed to be here, so they can't be American.
So what happens to the kid in that case?
They would have to go back to Nigeria.
So despite the kid being born here, they should be sent back to Nigeria?
Well, the parents weren't legally here, so yeah.
Well, let's say they were on vacation. Well, I said vacation, so I don't know if that's...
Well, I mean, yeah, technically, when I say legal, what I mean is a permanent legal status. That is to say they are a green card, they're a naturalized citizen, or they're a U.S.-born citizen. Because that's not the case, you wouldn't become a citizen.
Now, I heard, I don't know if it's true or it got passed, but I heard Trump got rid of birthright citizenship.
He's trying to. It's going before the Supreme Court right now.
I support that, and you're on board with that as well?
Yeah, I'm on board with getting rid of birthright citizenship.
Apparently, there's some confusion about birthright citizenship. So much confusion that President Trump has had to chime in. And so I just want to be honest. Birthright citizenship exists because of me. African Americans, descendants of former slaves. That's what it was for. It guaranteed African Americans citizenship in a country that had never acknowledged them as citizens or even more than 3/5 of a person. That's what it was for. It was not designed for an immigrant to hop over the fence and have a baby and, hey, that baby gets American citizenship. Wrong. It wasn't designed for rich immigrants to come over here and buy their citizenship by having babies.
This comment reflects two important points about the intended meaning of the clause by its authors, I think. First, they intended that the children of tribal Indians who resided on reservations and owed their direct allegiance to their tribes would not be entitled to birthright citizenship, but the children of assimilated Indians who had left their reservations and had established permanent residence among the body politic of the states would be entitled to birthright citizenship. Second, it is not at all plausible that the framers of the Citizenship Clause intended that tribal Indians to be able to evade this limitation on birthright citizenship for their children by the simple expedient of leaving the reservation long enough to give birth to a child. The key distinction between tribal Indians and assimilated Indians was allegiance. Tribal Indians owed their direct allegiance to the tribe, while an Indian who established a permanent domicile within the state and assimilated into the body politic committed his primary allegiance to the United States and thus entitled his children to citizenship at birth.
So, as we expected, the Supreme Court upheld birthright citizenship. But that's not going to be the end of this shit, because Black Americans have been in America for a long time. So we know how our country works. So, y'all who immigrated here and you had kids here, etc., I'm going to tell y'all what they finna do. Okay, and I know y'all gonna argue and say, no, that's not gonna happen, etc., because y'all don't listen until the shit fucking happens. They finna starve y'all out. They finna starve y'all out. They gonna make it so that you cannot work. Okay? They're gonna make it so that you cannot get public assistance, even though your child is a U.S. citizen and is entitled to benefits. You will have to go into the office to get the benefits. And when you go in the office and get the benefits, they have your information. And they will deport the parents. We're going to have to see an increase in social workers, because there are going to be a lot of kids in foster care, because y'all don't like to take y'all kids with you. That's just the truth. A lot of y'all ain't going to want to take your kids with you because you think they have a better life in America. So it's going to be an increase in children in the foster care system. Okay? Because they're American citizens, they can't be taken nowhere. But that's what they getting ready to hit these folk with. They gonna deport their parents. That's the truth. They will not let, they have no legal obligations to allow the parents to stay. They have no legal obligations to do that. They absolutely will deport the parents. Okay? And then, like I said, they're gonna restrict you working. They're gonna restrict you having, driver's licenses and shit. They're gonna make it very difficult. They gonna make y'all walk real hard. That cakewalk shit that was happening prior, it ain't gonna go down like that. It ain't gonna go down like that. They're gonna move y'all right on up out of here. Okay? So you know, and so it has been said, how the fuck this shit gonna go, so there's no surprises. Don't say ain't nobody told you. Have a good day. They gonna shut all that other shit down. You won't be able to get no businesses, none of that shit. They shut all that shit down. Anything that you have to put your name and information on in regard to the government, they gonna be running everybody's shit. Social services has already started this process. The housing authority has already started this process. Medicaid, all that shit, they done already started this process. They got your information. When you go and you got to put, what type of citizen you are, etc., like on employments and on employment and benefits and stuff like that, they got all y'all information. Okay? So yeah, they gonna be running down. They're gonna be running around here running down y'all. Just so you know. Okay? The American government always has a plan B, and they was ready for the plan B. Okay? And now y'all about to see their plan B. Okay? So, before y'all get to hooting and hollering, know that Jesse told you first.
It's really a bunch of black folks and niggas that believe that when we hear these white supremacists talking about overturning birthright citizenship, that don't account for this. I didn't have to remind them, hey, listen, man. The Dred Scott decision.
They didn't want us to have it in the first place.
But I go on and put my educator hat though, and try to walk them through the history, like the specific historical context and the specific legislation around how the black experience shapes the legal idea of birthright citizenship. For the people in the back, when it comes to birthright citizenship in America, that whole notion from a legal standpoint is always codified around the black experience. When Dred Scott decision came out, the Supreme Court justice said the word citizen was never intended for or to apply to people of African descent. Therefore, we don't give a damn about this nigga talking about. The Constitution does not apply to him. The Constitution was never implied for people like you when it comes to the word citizen. The 14th Amendment had to come back and say, actually,
clean it up.
Birthright citizenship is the 14th Amendment, but that cleaned it up. So when you start hearing them talking about passing executive, orders to overturn birthright citizenship, you are a motherfucking fool if you don't think that's going to impact black people. And when they start talking about it, deport people from within, and sending the homegrown criminals to El Salvador, who's most likely to find themselves victim of criminality? Or who's most likely to find themselves a criminal as conviction of crime? Black people. So what does it mean for you to say we think that immigration got nothing to do with us? What does it mean for you to be like, well, I don't think it got nothing to do? And then for me, it's like, so you didn't Wakanda forever, you didn't wear your dashikis, you dancing to your Afro, you know what I'm saying? Shit, your Afro beats, you listening to, you feel me? You Rihanna Navy. You know that when Rihanna started leaving Barbados, niggas didn't stop leaving Barbados. So to me, it's like there are various ways that African American culture, African American vernacular, either A, celebrates, or B, is incorporated or is implicated in all various ways that people across the diaspora, you feel me, contribute to what we do here. Hey, Haitians and Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans and Nigerians and Ghanaians, they're going to also find themselves in the crosshairs of racial profiling and mass deportation. So I got this like
Already are.
multiple ways of thinking like, hey, man, like immigration.
Well, look what they're going after with the temporary, what is it? You know, the temporary status. Haitians.
They're eating the cats and eating dogs.
You know, so yeah, that's kind of misguided. I mean, I'm always expecting stuff to land on us. I mean, eventually.
Developing into the Don Lemon Show newsroom. Donald Trump once again is going after birthright citizenship after his administration's previous attempt to restrict it was struck down in June. Trump is now pursuing 2 new executive orders aimed at limiting who qualifies for citizenship at birth. Both are already facing legal challenges from the ACLU. That's setting up another major court fight. Birthright citizenship comes from the 14th Amendment. You don't get to rewrite the Constitution with an executive order because you don't like what it says. And this is bigger than birthright citizenship, y'all, because once a president starts testing whether he can get around one constitutional protection, you have to pay attention to which one he might come after next. We're going to keep following this story. And for the full story, check out my Lucky Lemon 7 newsletter on Substack. The link is in bio.
A whole lot of people thought that birthright citizenship was going to fail, okay? However, it did not fail. Okay, so if you are born in the United States of America, you are a birthright citizen. That is the ruling of the Supreme Court. And that is what so many Black American forefathers fought for way back in the day, okay? Because back in the day, they were trying to base it on race and race alone. However, it's not based on race alone. It's about the fact you're born here, okay? And contrary to what many people believe, Black Americans and white American abolitionists and politicians who were on the right side of history decided that early on, they were like, no, we're going to fight for birthright citizenship instead of it being based on race. Because if, in fact, they were to base it on race, they would have only let white folk be citizens, to be quite honest. They would have based it all on race. But now that I mentioned birthright citizenship and how the Supreme Court just upheld birthright citizenship and how this has been a long ongoing fight to get it way back in the day for Black Americans and white Americans who stood on the side of birthright citizenship, I want to talk about that because I ran into a comment. People didn't understand how Black Americans actually co-founded the United States of America, and this was one of the challenges that Black Americans actually took part in. There is absolutely nothing. Let me say this: there's absolutely nothing that took place in the United States of America good that Black Americans did not participate in. I'm gonna say this: the movie Roots has y'all screwed up. Okay. The movie Roots has y'all screwed up. The Black Americans were doing more than just what you saw on Roots. Okay. If you care to even read the book I wrote on it, okay, Black Americans did everything in the United States of America the same way as white Americans did, okay? There's no white people can do this, white people, Black people couldn't do this. No. As far as skill set, as far as surveying, as far as architects, engineers, Black Americans did the same exact thing as white Americans, and Black America actually did it more because we were enslaved. Okay, we did it more. So the founding of the United States of America was not just white folk. I just want to get that out. I just want to get that out there. It was not just white folk. It was Black Americans. There's nothing, when I tell you, I want y'all to understand this. Enslaved does not mean just working in the fields. We did everything. Everything. We did more, actually. We did everything. That's exactly why Black America can hold this nation together, because we know what to do. We know what to do. Okay? Black America did just as much and more for the founding of this nation in white America. So even when it comes down to birthright citizenship, it was Black Americans who freaking created that bad boy. Straight up. And I'm going to prove it to you right now, okay? If it were not for Black Americans, there would be no birthright citizenship. If it were not for Black Americans, there would be no birthright citizenship. That's facts. That's facts. All of what is going on in the United States of America is because Black Americans fought for it and made this country, our country, live up to what it's supposed to be. When you want to talk about the rulers of the good in America, you're talking about Black America.
Welcome back, guys. After looking at this entire debate, I think Black Americans need to be very careful about celebrating something simply because politicians claim it is being done in our name. Yes, the history matters. The 14th Amendment came out of the aftermath of slavery and the struggle to establish Black citizenship and equal protection under the law. That history should never be erased. But there is a major difference between saying Black Americans deserve recognition for the history behind the 14th Amendment and saying therefore other people should lose constitutional protection. Those are two completely different arguments, and this is where the left has an important point. If Black Americans have learned anything from American history, it should be that government power must always be watched carefully. There was a time when the government said Black people were not citizens. There was a time when the law treated Black people as property. There was a time when Black Americans could be born in this country and still be denied basic rights. That's the part that concerns me, because presidents change, Congress change, political parties change, and the power created today could be used differently tomorrow. So when somebody says, don't worry, this is going to help Black Americans, my response is simple. Show us how. Where is the investment in Black communities? Where is the economic opportunity? Where is the protection from racial discrimination? Where is the serious response to violence against Black people? Where is the attention to missing and murdered Black children? Where is the effort to close the racial wealth gap? Those are the questions that matters, because Black Americans don't need another political slogans. We need results. And I understand why some Black Americans are frustrated with immigration. There are legitimate conversations about immigration policy, housing, wages, public resource, and border security. Those conversations should happen, but we should not allow politicians to turn Black Americans against other communities while ignoring the problems Black communities have faced for generations. And we definitely shouldn't allow our history to become a political weapon. Black Americans don't need immigrants to fail in order for Black Americans to succeed. Our ancestors already made enormous sacrifices. They built this country under conditions most people today cannot imagine. They worked without freedom. They fought for a country that discriminated against them. They protested, organized, marched, went to court, and risked their life to expand American democracy. So the lesson shouldn't be take right away from somebody else. The lesson should be protect the rights people fought so hard to establish, and let's not allow this to become Black versus Latino, Black versus Asian, or immigrants versus Black American, because while ordinary people fight each other over who belongs, politicians can avoid answering the bigger question about inequality, housing, education, wages, and economic opportunities. That's why Black Americans should demand more than political promises. If you genuinely care about Black Americans, show us the policy, show us the investment, show us the jobs, show us the accountability, show us how Black families are actually going to become stronger. Because after centuries of struggle, Black Americans deserve more than being used as a talking point. So don't automatically celebrate a policy just because someone says it's being done for us. Question it, examine it, ask who benefits, because Black history deserves respect, Black Americans deserve justice, Black communities deserve investment, and constitutional rights deserve protection. We can demand all of those things at the same time. And if politicians genuinely want Black Americans on their side, don't just tell us who you are against. Tell us what you are actually going to do for us. That's the standard they should have to meet. Thanks for staying with me throughout the end of this video. If you're just coming across this channel for the first time, do well to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future discussion. Bye.